In the early days of the game, Konami printed a slew of mediocre battle traps which would end up never seeing play. Among these was Metalmorph, whose distinguishing feature was that it was mentioned by name on a couple main deck monsters as part of their summoning condition. In this video, we'll go over why Metalmorph and its monsters were so bad, even for their time, and the impact these cards had in the future of Yu-Gi-Oh! Let's start by going over the original cards. First of all, we have Metalmorph. This is a normal trap which can target and equip itself to a face-up monster on the field. While equipped, that monster gains 300 attack and defense, and if it attacks, it gains half as much attack as the monster it's battling during damage calculation only. While a 300 attack boost is quite a minor amount, it's worth noting this card was released early on in the game's history for its biggest competition being Reinforcements, which is 200 higher but also only a one-time boost, while Metalmorph sticks around. This is without even getting to the fact that this is a much better card offensively, letting you beat over huge bodies with any common beater. Why did this card see no play even during the early years? Well, it's a couple of things. First of all, the earlier in Yugioh you go, the more the game is based entirely on the available power spells. While Metalmorph is technically stronger than much of the pack filler you could see at this time, it doesn't hold a candle to any of the staples of the period, such as Dark Hole or Change of Heart. Even if playing Metalmorph trades well into a battle phase, you're still going to get 2 for 1 when the turn rolls over to your opponent and they inevitably remove both it and the equipped monster somehow. While it has all the makings of a card that would dominate the most commonly played form of the game at the time, Playground Yu-Gi-Oh!, it couldn't even fulfill that role due to its availability. You were only able to obtain it as a promo for the video game Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories in North America. Outside of Spain, who got access to the card only a couple of years after, it ended up unobtainable for much of the rest of the Western world all the way until 2007. By then, this card was already power crept by many other more versatile options, such as Shrink, which kind of achieves the same thing but is a quick play spell card instead. Alongside it, we also got Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon, a level 8 Dark Machine monster with 2800 attack and 2400 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned from your deck by tributing a Red Eye's Black Dragon equipped with Metalmorph. This card is extremely unique for having an inherent summon condition that works straight from the deck. While it's very common to see conditions like this on monsters that come out from the hand or graveyard, it's only ever been printed in less than a dozen cards out of over 10,000 total. Due to the way it works, the summoning doesn't even start a chain and cannot be responded to directly. So, for example, despite being a summon from the deck, your opponent can't use Ash Blossom and Joy Spring in response to it. Unfortunately, the qualities of this card end there. It requires you to play a terrible vanilla monster, which was only ever put in competitive decks as a Garnet to bring out Dragoon when Verte was still legal, but this was way before Red Eyes even became a proper archetype. Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon's only redeeming quality is that its retrain, Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon, is actually a really good card that's seen play pretty much ever since it came out, and has nothing to do with Metalmorph. When looking at Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon, you'd have to consider you're giving up a monster who'd get 2700 total attack, plus half of whatever it attacked into due to Metalmorph, into an effect less 2800 attack beater. The 100 attack boost wouldn't even be worth a slot in a deck by itself, but it's even worse when you lose the only thing Metalmorph had over Battle Tricks. It really is puzzling why they didn't incorporate the attack gain effect into this at all. Even if a combo to bring out a huge beater might not sound so terrible for the first couple of Yu-Gi-Oh! Formats, you could do it much better by using the Flute of Summoning Dragon to bring out Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand instead, which is much easier to pull off. Outside of the novelty of summoning a monster from the deck, there is never any reason to include this card into any strategy. Further on, Zoa, another level 7 vanilla, also got a Metalmorph version of itself with Metal Zoa. And just like with Red Eye's Black Metal Dragon, it's one level higher and has 400 more in each stat than its original form. However, this card is even more forgettable due to not being attached to a fan-favorite archetype like the Red Eyes is, even if its stats are a direct improvement over it. The only interesting thing about Zoa is that it became a bit of a meme in the OCG due to the new Labyrinth archetype. Japan often takes an unusual liking to early Yu-Gi-Oh! Vanillas, which is why Morinfin actually got exclusive official Konami sleeves at some point, since it was the most voted card in a poll. Zoa is a fiend monster, so it can be cheated out with many Labyrinth cards, and its accompanying Metalmorph can also be searched in the archetype due to being a normal trap. This led to many jokes in the OCG over how to play Metal Zoa Turbo with the deck, but not much else. For better or for worse, the Metalmorph thing was dropped entirely after these two terrible retrains. However, Konami wouldn't let go of the idea of special summons from the deck so soon. Dark Sage was released just a couple of years afterward, and it's a level 9 Dark Spellcaster monster with 2800 attack and 3200 defense. It cannot be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned by its own effect. After applying the effect of Time Wizard and calling the coin flip right, you contribute 1 Dark Magician to special summon it from your hand or deck. It also lets you add 1 spell card of your choice from your deck to your hand when it's special summoned this way. Differently from the Metalmorph monster, Dark Sage's summoning effect actually triggers. This means that once the conditions are met, this is a card effect you'll be activating straight from your deck. While there's always some fun to be had in picking up your deck and activating an effect straight from there, something which usually led to a game loss under normal circumstances, this does make it so Dark Sage's summoning condition is respondable by hand traps and the like. Outside of that, it does have a good effect of searching any spell in the game that can win you the game on the spot. Odds are your opponent wasn't putting much of a fight if you managed to bring out Time Wizard into the field, resolve its effect right after Dark Magician was out, and also resolve Dark Sage. While getting this card out was almost impossible at the time, it's at least very much easier to resolve nowadays due to the plethora of Dark Magician support, as well as Fusion Deployment, which can bring out Time Wizard from the deck by revealing Time Wizard of Tomorrow, even if you'll always be at the mercy of the coin toss no matter what. While Dark Sage was still too clunky to ever see play in anything, at least it wasn't less than the sum of its parts like the Metalmorph monsters were. However, the same couldn't be said for Konami's next stab at this sort of effect, with Theon, the Great Sphinx. This is a level 10 light beast with 3500 attack, which must be special summoned from your hand or deck by paying 500 life points when both Androsphinx and Sphinx Talia are destroying your side of the field at the same time. For reference, these are both level 10 beaters, which can be special summoned to your side of the field by paying 500 life points while Pyramid of Light is phase up on the field. Pyramid of Light is a continuous trap card which does nothing but destroy Andro and Talia when it leaves the field, thus making the intended way to bring out Theon being popping your own Pyramid while both of them are on the field. As if that didn't sound bad enough, you'd have to make sure they're both destroyed as a Chain Link 1, due to Theon being a when you can effect. Something as simple as a Chain Link 2 Mystical Space Typhoon and Pyramid can make this card miss timing straight from the deck. And for all that effort, this card gives you a 3500 attack body and lets you pay 500 life points and increases attack by 3000 until the end phase. Continue with the trend of terrible cards which can be summoned from the deck for their own effects, we have this, in which you exchange a 3500 and a 3000 monster for one with 3500 attack which can go up to 6500 for a turn, with a summoning condition that's arguably harder to get off than the previous card we talked about. There's an extremely convoluted OTK that can be done by attacking with both the smaller Sphinxes and then popping them during the battle phase to attack for lethal, but both back then and now, you can more reliably kill using 2 cards than you can with these 4. Outside of coming up with Evil Eye's gimmick of paying 500 life points to do anything a decade and a half before them, there's nothing that stands out with these cards. Even though it would take a while for Konami to attempt this gimmick on monsters again, Metalmorph itself would eventually get a retrain with Rare Metalmorph. This is a continuous trap card which can be activated by targeting a machine monster on the field. While it's face up, it grants machine monster 500 attack and negates the first spell effect that targets that monster. This card falls into the pool of mediocrity as Metalmorph and 100 other attack boosting effects. While the targeting protection could come in handy sometimes, the machine type restriction made it far too awkward for any deck to run. The most interesting tidbit about this card is that its printing seemingly predicted the future. When Metalmorph was released for most of the world, it was misprinted as a continuous trap, just like Rare Metalmorph. And though this card was never good enough to see play in the TCG, it had a very short burst of playability at some point in Duel Links as a way for machine decks running cards like Sergeant Electro and Ancient Gear Knight to play around enemy controller, one of the format warping staples of that game. The Familiar Possessed came out not long after. They all had similar summoning conditions where you must send their flip monster counterpart and a monster of their corresponding attribute to special summon them from the hand or deck. When summoned by this effect, they all get piercing battle damage. Even if it may not look like much, these were the best cards with the ability to special summon themselves from the deck to be put in the game, and by far. Not because their summoning condition would be fulfilled more easily than the others, since you just needed your flip monster to resolve and your opponent have a monster of the same attribute on the field, or because of their piercing battle damage. No, it was because they didn't actually have any summoning restrictions. So you could just normal summon them and have a level 4 1850 beater, which is more utility than any of the cards we talked about so far would give you 99% of the time. Despite not having been the first to have this gimmick, this piece of support for the individual Charmers would make the ability to special summon themselves from the deck become exclusive to the possessed cards from this point on. Several years after the release of these cards, we would get Familiar Possessed Dark, which packs the same effect as the previous ones, but for Dark the Dark Charmer. And as a small bonus, it also adds a level 3 or 4 light spellcaster from the deck on summon. Half a decade after, Konami would give us the Familiar Possessed form of the last one, Lina. Just like Dark, she also got a bonus effect to add a spellcaster with 1500 defense or less on summon. While they both got decent effects with plenty of targets, these cards were obviously meant to just complete this of the evolved versions of the Charmers, and to not have any kind of actual meta relevance. With so many cards surrounding the originals, the only thing that was left was to tie them up in a proper archetype, which Konami would do with the release of the Charmer Structure deck. It was then that we would see monsters which can special summon themselves from the deck being printed into the game for the last time. Rasenru, Nefarious Archifiend, Gigabyte, and Greater Inari Fire were all evolved versions of the original monsters present in the Familiar Possessed card artwork. They each need you to send a face-up spellcaster and a level 4 lower monster of their corresponding attribute to summon themselves from the hand or deck. And they all flow into a possessed spell or trap card of their respective spiritual art when sent to the graveyard. They also each have a different on-summon effect, which is inflicting burn damage equal to your opponent's monster's attack with Inaba, a hand rip, and then making each player draw a card with Gigabyte, a non-targeting bounce with Rasenru, and special summoning a monster from the graveyard with Archfiend. While these monsters all actually had pretty decent effects, and not so hard summoning conditions, the Charmer archetype still failed to hold its own when it came to competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! It was now 2020, and if you wanted to get utility by just sending any monster from the field to the graveyard, well, you could just link summon instead. Be it for removal, interruption, or extension, you now had a plethora of much better options which would not take main deck slots, and accomplish the same thing, but much easier to pull off. The only impact this archetype ever had in the game was with the link retrains of each Charmer, which have pretty much all seen competitive play at some point, due to being able to steal a monster from your opponent's graveyard. This brings us to where we are today, as this mechanic hasn't gotten any new monsters ever since. All in all, the concept of monsters which can bring themselves out from the deck might have been interesting into the first few years of the game, but it suffered from having zero good cards which could make use of it. It wouldn't take long for Konami to realize that they could have this same kind of concept work better by making use of the extra deck. Contact fusions became a thing even before synchro monsters with the Gladiator Beast, and they achieved more or less the same thing which special summon from the deck cards aimed to do. While it is true that it would take a bit more until we got one card fusions such as Rainbow Overdragon and Egyptian God Slime, we can clearly see that Konami ended up giving all of the monsters with similar summon conditions a purple border for a reason. Be it Cyber Dark End Dragon or Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon, both need you to tribute a monster equipped with something specific to special summon themselves, just like the Metalmorph monsters, or just by tributing a monster once certain conditions have been met during their turn, like Thunder Dragon Colossus and Dark Sage. Not that cards like Metal Zoa or Thenan would be viable if they were extra deck monsters, but at least they'd be better at doing what they're meant to do. This mechanic isn't actually terrible by itself. Unlike other cards in this series which are held back by their base designs such as Geminis or Spirits, it just hasn't had a single good enough monster printed for it. It is annoying to have to run useless cards in your deck unless specific conditions are met, but history has shown that people are willing to play bricks or even garnets in their deck as long as the payoff is strong enough. If we ever get something with an easy enough summon condition and a decent enough effect that special summons itself from the deck, there's no reason why it wouldn't see play. But then we have the problem that if Konami wanted a monster that works like that, why wouldn't they just print it as a link monster instead? It's unlikely we'll ever see monsters with you can special summon this card from your deck tag being put into the game again. But who knows? That's also what everyone was thinking before Konami dropped the newest wave of Charmer support. Maybe we'll see in the next huge wave of power creep being starters that are available from the deck even if you don't draw them. Or maybe we'll see these cards get forgotten with time as many others were. Either way, for now we can safely say this mechanic has never been successful at any point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, despite the fact that it can very easily be made that way if they just made any decent cards with it. Alright, and that's the video. If you can think of any good ways this mechanic could be fixed, or know of any other ones you'd like to see us covered, be sure to let us know down in the comments.